There is a saying that has been attributed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, where he said, "The giving hand is better than the receiving hand." Now, this is the wisdom that has guided the Muslim communities for over 14 centuries, and it has resulted in this extraordinary system of wealth redistribution that actually predates the modern welfare state. It also predates the Bretton Woods institutions, and it predates the very notion of development finance as we understand it today. And yet, when we gather in the corridors of global economic governance to discuss how to finance development, how to relieve debt distress, how to mobilize domestic resources, this ancient and living tradition is nowhere to be found. The global financial architecture, as it is presently constituted, has simply refused to see it. And this is what I want to address in this video today. It's about Zakat and it's about Sukuk, and how these two Islamic finance models should be integrated into the global financial architecture. The conversation I'm having here with you is not merely as a technical matter of expanding the toolkit of development finance, though it is certainly my intention, but it is more as a question of epistemological justice, right? We've got to ask ourselves the questions as we think about reforming the global financial architecture. Whose knowledge counts in the governance of global finance? Whose fiscal traditions are deemed worthy of integration into the architecture that shapes how nations mobilize, spend, and redistribute resources? And what does it mean that an obligatory wealth transfer mechanism that has been practiced by nearly 1 billion people remains invisible to the institutions that claim to govern international economic cooperation? Think of what we are ignoring. Zakat is an annual obligation upon every Muslim who holds wealth above a basic threshold. It is not a voluntary charity. It is a pillar of the faith, and it is also as fundamental as prayer. So Zakat can be translated as the Islamic tax on wealth. Every year, Muslims must transfer 2.5% of their accumulated wealth to those in need. The poor, the indebted, the displaced. We've got the World Bank and the Islamic Development Bank, that have estimated that if Zakat were fully collected and mobilized, it could actually amount to between 200 billion and even $1 trillion annually. Now, to put this into perspective, think about African governments. If all African governments collectively spend more on debt servicing than on healthcare. So we are searching for resources to relieve debt distress, to finance hospitals and schools, and to support women and children. And there exists a mechanism that is designed precisely for these purposes that we have not really thought to integrate as part of the global financial architecture. And the same also applies to Sukuk. These are Islamic bonds that operate without interest, unlike conventional debt, which traps countries in cycles of borrowing to repay borrowing. Sukuk are actually structured around ownership in real assets. So the returns come from actual economic activity, not from interest accumulation. And I think that is the biggest principle of fairness in the way in which the international financial architecture, the global fiscal order that we're trying to establish on the principles of fairness and justice should actually embed. Now, the global Sukuk market now exceeds $900 billion. When you think of countries like Indonesia, who are issuing sovereign Sukuk to finance green infrastructure, you're thinking about Egypt's first Sukuk issuance, which was oversubscribed 6 times over. Here is actually an alternative to the debt instruments that have constrained fiscal policy across the global south for decades. There are countries that are invested in Sukuk, right? And the global financial architecture barely acknowledges it exists. Now, why does all this matter for the House of Fiscal Wisdom? It matters because we thought about creating the Commission on Financing Development. And it is through this commission that we want to ask different questions, important questions. We need to know how much zakat actually flows each year, through which channels, and where it goes. This data simply does not exist because no one with power has thought to collect it. We need to explore how zakat can be channeled toward national priorities like debt relief and health financing in ways that respect its religious foundations. We need to bring Sukuk into conversations about alternatives to predatory lending. So the fiscal wisdom of 1 billion plus people, the Muslims, it cannot remain invisible. So the House of Fiscal Wisdom, we're not here to tinker with a broken system. We are here to build something different. And that begins by opening our eyes to what has been in front of us all along. How do we think about incorporating zakat as part of Kenya's constitutional framework so that it's an obligation for Muslims to think about contributing their zakat to Kenya's budget? And then that budget that, is made up of partial zakat proceeds can be redistributed towards financing education, healthcare of women, of children, of the sick, of the elderly, of the vulnerable. I mean, these are really critical discussions we need to have from a normative grounding, from trying to look at the Islamic traditions and also the conservative traditions and see how law and religion can come together to support the reform of the global financial architecture. Thank you.